President Trump says a plan to import more beef will help bring down prices at the grocery store while also helping American ranchers.
The president will allow up to 300,000 metric tons of ground beef into the U.S. at lower tariffs over the next 90 days. He says the beef will be sold 25% below the current market price. He did not say where these new beef imports will be coming from. But the National Cattlemen's Beef Association says flooding the market with below market beef could drive down cattle prices and discourage ranchers from expanding their herds, something the group says is needed to lower beef prices in the long term.
Tried to lay to the White House that it does not have the effect that they hoped it would. Anytime you interfere with these markets and push those off, the only people that are going to make money is the big packers and the retailers. There's no guarantee they pass that along to the consumer. And it has a big ripple effect in the chain the other way, down the chain for the ranchers. We're finally seeing some profitable times in ranching and signals that would make us make the herd grow. And then we see these knee-jerk reactions with the government interfering, and it's going to have the opposite effect. I think we've got to stop interfering with a free market system, let the market be the market, and understand beef is high, but everything is high. And it's relative to me. You know, you look at a $6.50 pound of ground beef, and what's a box of cereal cost? $15 or a latte? I think it's really disheartening that the administration wants to continually attack the cattle side of things when everything's high, and we get that, but why go after the cattle sector? And when we finally become profitable, to have the government shake it down just because we want food prices to get cheaper doesn't sit very well. My question is, when we're not profitable, then what does the government do to prop us up? And we don't want that. The industry, none of the ranchers that you deal with or I deal with, we don't want the government running it. We want a free market system that works. Just give us a fair shake. Let competition do its thing, and supply and demand will do it. And we always end up overproducing. I can say that out loud because history tells us. And that's when we'll see these prices come down, is when we overproduce again.
Of a new world screwworm outbreak, the federal government plans to resume Mexican cattle imports. The move comes after Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins faced criticism from Republicans and the cattle industry to open the border to help ease high prices. The USDA closed the border this time last year because illegal cattle smuggling started the spread of the parasite. Fly sterilization has been underway since. There are 32 cases in 15 South Texas counties. Mexican cattle imports will resume on August 20th.
I've found out that I can get more money for my animals if I keep feeding them grass, get the calves to an older age, and then sell that beef directly to consumers. Now, there are government barriers to that, as you can imagine, and the big players in the beef industry don't want any of those barriers removed. So the USDA rules require you to employ a USDA inspector in your facility full-time if you want to have the USDA certification. And there's a butcher house 3 miles from here, 3 miles from my house, that does a fantastic job on these animals. And as long as I sell you a share of this animal before I take it to that butcher shop, it's all legal, and you can have the meat after it's butchered. But I can't sell you less than a quarter of the animal. And it's healthy, and the U.S. government has no problem with that. But if I try to sell you a steak, and we don't pretend at least that you own this animal before I butcher it, I go to jail. And the big guys like that, because you can imagine how hard it is if I come up to you and say, would you like to buy some of my beef? And you say, yes, I'm having a cookout this weekend. And I say, great, the smallest order is 300 pounds. But you can go to the supermarket and buy one steak because that has the imprimatur of the USDA, because that facility employed a USDA person and kept them at their facility when they were butchering. So the net result of that regulation is, instead of going 3 miles from my house, I have to go 150 miles from my house to a facility that has a USDA inspector, which raises the price and the effort And then I've got to come 150 miles back with frozen beef without letting it thaw, and then distribute frozen beef to consumers.
How does a company that's worth over $20 billion close one of its locations quite literally overnight? Well, that's exactly the question that those in the cattle industry are asking about the nation's second largest beef processing company, Tyson Foods. On April 13, 2026, Tyson informed their 2,500 plus employees at the Joslin, Illinois beef plant that they're out of a job. Not in a month, not in a couple weeks, that very day. This location was originally founded by the Iowa beef processors and has been in operation since 1983. Anyway, they process about 3,000 head of cattle every single day. And while workers will be compensated for the next 60 days, it still leaves the question, why overnight? Tyson announced at their shareholders meeting that they've lost an estimated $650 million in their largest segment, beef. And while they published the Joslin plant will be shutting down immediately, they're also shutting down 2 other locations. If you look at the cattle industry, back in 22, we hit major liquidation numbers because we had a multi-year mega drought affecting cattle producers across the nation. And what you've probably heard left us in a 75-year drought. This shows in the financials as packer margins first turned negative in September 24. And by October 2025, they were losing $126 a head. Overall beef margins dropped 269% from 2025 compared to 23. And if you look at Tyson's public financial reports, their 2025 fiscal year, they lost over $1.13 billion in the beef industry alone. Now, this does not mean that Tyson came out in the red. Tyson is the largest multi-species protein processing company in the United States. That means they have a diverse portfolio, and that diversification left them in the black and even gave their executives a pretty handsome bonus. But it does explain why they're shutting down beef plants that are operating anywhere from 10 to 15% reduced processing capacity. But what does this mean for producers? Well, those in the Midwest are probably the ones most affected. The nearest facility is now 160 miles away, but really it's the lack of warning. The plant closure abruptness has left cattle feeders basically screaming to figure out logistics of where cattle are going to go. And just like when Lexington plant closed, live cattle and feeder cattle futures fell while pushing box beef prices higher. There are a couple theories out there. Some like to say that Tyson's getting out of the beef industry. That's their largest segment. I doubt it. And I also heard that some people are saying that this is a way to buy time to fix their facilities so they can process cattle that are bigger frames and be more efficient. While none of those theories are proven, it still is all speculation, but it does leave the question of what's going to come next. But what do you think? Do you think it's purely business and just mitigating operational losses, or do you think there's something larger?
This has been such a hard video for me to make just because there's so much I want to say. And I'm not trying to get messaging lost in the, in any narrative here. So let me just say this. You guys see what's happening. Let's just be real honest. I want to make this quick, and I want solutions, right? So let's just be honest, right? This idea that bringing in 300 metric tons of beef from unsourced nations just because we can, because of the 2015 change in policy, a change in law, it's not a great idea, right? The economists don't think it's a good idea. The ranchers don't think it's a good idea. People that are looking at this with an unbiased perspective, and even with a biased perspective at this point, see that it's not a good idea. We know that China has already suspended imports from JBS out of Argentina for everything, hormone detection, disease concerns, antibiotics that are used. So when China is unwilling to accept JBS food, for example, it says a lot. If we look at historical precedences, we realize that the big four, right? And so for those of you that don't know, the big four would be JBS, Tyson Foods, Cargill, National Beef. They control 85% of the beef processing market. We know that they have used their influence in the processing market to increase prices and price fix, right? A U.S. judge, and they've paid out over $87.5 million the last time they did it. Now, last month, July 2026, A U.S. judge rules that beef purchasers can pursue price fixing class action lawsuits against them again, right? So we see this historic narrative of price fixing and basically bleeding the American people dry. Do I expect it to continue? If their prior conduct is any indication of future conduct, yes. But let's be honest, this is capitalism, right? And I'm not here, if you get upset by this, you are the problem. If you believe in free markets, if you believe in capitalism, you should believe in price fixing. Like, price fixing should not be a bad thing, right? Because they should be able to make as much money as humanly possible, right? They're providing you a product that you're willing to pay for. It is what it is. Eating beef, you don't have to do it. Just being honest. So if you don't like that and that makes you feel a certain way and you're upset by it, okay, well, if you believe and agree with free market capitalism, then how can you not like that, right? And so again, and I'm not saying I'm against capitalism, right? It's like anything else, man. Like, I love my family, but if my family does something that I don't think is right or ethical, I can tell them about it. I can still love my family and be like, hey brother, hey man, like, probably not the best idea, right? So just because you like something or even love something doesn't mean you can't have honest critiques of it. But if you can't get past that, maybe your thought process is part of the problem there. And then we see that the U.S. border reopens to Mexican cattle imports. Again, economists are doubting that move will reduce beef prices. We know historically that kind of that border import has been closed because of parasites. So there's all these things that are happening. And we have to realize that this comes down to red tape bureaucracy. And the truth of the matter is, when we talk about red tape bureaucracy, it's going to change there's only going to change for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's a critical incident that forces a victory garden type world, right? And then even then, I see the backdoor deals of, hey, let's just get through this and we'll pay you back with interest, like they did in our last Victory Garden initiative. Or we just have issues that are so bad that it forces the hand of the people in the United States, right? The government may just have to come out and say, hey, you have to grow food where it is, right? Like, we can't help you. This is just, it's too much. And so when we're looking at this from a prepared-minded person, right, let's just be very clear. Importing 300 metric tons of subpar beef product into this country from an unnamed source, I don't see any articulation. And if you can articulate the facts. I don't see how that helps American citizens long term, right? Sure, 25% decrease initially for a subpar product. I don't think you're doing anybody any favor, right? You're basically, it should cost less if it's a subpar product that I have no idea what country of origin is. I should pay a whole lot less. So I don't think you're doing the American people a deal, but you're certainly not helping the American producer. As you know, and many of you guys do know, I've raised cattle. Many of you guys have raised cattle. Gestation period alone is 9 months, right? If you're going to grain finished cattle, 14 to 20 months. If you're going to grass finished cattle, 20 to 36 months. So this 90-day initiative, in my opinion, doesn't mean a whole lot. It doesn't produce a whole lot of sense from an academic, scientific, economic backing. Like, that day, those amount of days, that number is really matters not. I mean, what it really matters for is just how much tariff-free product is coming through at this point. So what do we do? Well, again, the truth is we have to grow food where we can. We have to locally source. And that really just comes down to, right, convenience, right? We got to, if you're not a food producer yourself and you're concerned, this is going to suck. But the convenience of it is going to be something that how much inconvenience are you willing to take on, right? And by inconvenience, it really just comes down to how much time and effort are you going to look to source a local source in which you can utilize. Because once you got that local source and connection, I guarantee you can form good partnerships, especially if they know they have a repeat customer, right? It is what it is. So how much time are you willing to invest to find somebody that works for you, that can give you what you're looking for without all the added steps and without all the added price gouging? Because what do I mean by that? In our system, we live in a system of, 15, 20 steps, right? A lot of people think that the farmers raise the food, they take the food to a processor, and the processor immediately sends it. No, that's not how that works. And every step of the way, there has to be value added, right? There's money that has to be made. So the farmers are getting paid for their cattle, right? So that's the initial, right? Farmers have to get paid. Then you have to pay the processor. Then you have to pay whoever has that contract, whoever's buying that beef. They have to get paid. Then after that, you have to go and get that product to whatever warehouse or whatever entity is going to take it on. And then from there, it could go to many different stores. So every step of the way, there's profit that needs to be made on this product. And so again, this idea that money is just being added on every step of the way. Taxes are being added on every step of the way. You're paying for the transportation costs every step of the way. I mean, you got to pay for the energy costs to get it, to grow it. Then from the farm to a processor, then from the processor to a warehouser, from a warehouser to whatever entity is going to take it up, right? So every step of energy on the way, every step of transportation, every step of security, every step of infrastructure, just to keep the lights on, that's all price, that's all added price that's going into that initial product. So you can save a whole lot more money if you do the inconvenient part of locally sourcing it first, and then getting it straight from that local source. Plus, it makes the food more bulletproof in the regards of these people are growing it sustainably. Now they have a customer. They can take that. They can take those resources that you're giving them, and they can expand, and they can make their systems ever more resilient. Because again, for a lot of us, this isn't about this is about surviving, right? We have to take away the idea of, okay, we're trying to make tons of money, right? Because that's how one entity looks at it, to how do we survive and build resilient systems? And there's plenty of people that are just wanting to survive and build resilient systems. And so that's something to look at. But also, let's also remember, right? It doesn't always have to be beef. What's for dinner, right? Beef is great. Cows are great. It's all good stuff. But getting this out of realizing that there's so many other options, right? And I'm always been a big fan. I think the two livestock animals that are about to go through the roof is going to be rabbits and hair sheep, right? Rabbits and hair sheep. I mean, think about it. Right now, I'll put some video. I'll put some videos up, but it is so easy. I can literally take a electric lawnmower, right, powered by solar, and I can mow my pasture, and I can get bags and bags and bags of pasture, and I can dump it out into a grow out bin, and I can just grow out rabbits. I can just grow them out. And then I can take that, and I can immediately take that. I can dispatch them, and I can immediately put away, depending on how many rabbits you have, even if you have a small herd. And by small herd, even if you have 4 female rabbits, 1 buck, you have 5 rabbits altogether. I mean, you're putting away 50 pounds of high quality meat away every 2 months easily. Like, you're just putting away food that you're growing resiliently off grid, virtually for free, right? Does your grass grow? Does your pasture grow? Yeah. I mean, it's a renewable resource, and you can just keep growing them out because they are prolific producers. And so, yes, you can put away 50 pounds of meat every 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months, no problem. I mean, you're just putting it away, and it's a renewable resource. So wouldn't that be great? And you can ground it up. You can do we can do whatever, but you can do this simply with pasture, and you can do a colony setup. You can do a cage setup. You can utilize their droppings as high quality fertilizer. Like, there are resilient systems that people are doing today that they're surviving. They're surviving and thriving off systems that they're using today. And that's just rabbits. That's not including hair sheep, right? A lot of people don't like sheep because of the woolly oil. Well, the great thing about hair sheep is the meat tastes like venison. It's like a fatty venison. It's great, right? They're resilient. I think hair sheep are the best of both worlds when it comes to sheep and goats, right? They produce, they will eat just about anything, just like goats are. They'll graze, unlike goats, and then they'll eat woody stuff, just like goats. And if you have a good hair sheep, right, they produce. You can also get milk and dairy products from them. And again, you can do this in smaller enclosure, because I get it. It's tough. This idea that you're going to get the average everyday person to be like, yeah, I'm going to have a cow. That's a big animal that requires infrastructure. A cow is overwhelming for most people. Sheep, they're not overwhelming. Very easy to handle. If you can handle having a dog, you can easily do a sheep. They're very docile. They're very easy to handle. And they provide so much. So I see that these resilient systems as ways for people to start to grow out their independence, right? And so I see that has to be kind of a culture shift, right? This shift of all we eat is chicken, pork, and beef, right? Okay, that might be a thing that might be a thing that we have to get over. We have to realize that there's other higher quality animal products out there that can be utilized to ensure that we feed ourselves during the hard times coming, because it's going to be interesting to see what food prices are going to be this time next year. And by interesting, I mean do everything you can to make that codependency a non-issue. I think that's what we should be pushing forward to. So anyway, don't want to make this video too long. I hope this video was helpful. Tell me what you guys are thinking in the comment section below. I want to know what you guys are thinking. How are you guys going to hedge this off? What do you see coming as far as prices? What do you see coming as far as geopolitics are going to affect food sovereignty? Curious to know what you guys have to say in the comment section below. As always, guys, long live the Republic.